Somewhere in this world, right now, someone is reciting from memory, word for word, a text that is over 1400 years old. No other book on earth has been memorized by so many people, in so many places, for so many generations. This is the story of that book. Not just how it was revealed, but how it survived, perfectly intact, for 14 centuries. Before we get into it, if this kind of history interests you, hit subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel keep making videos like this. The year was 610 CE. The month was Ramadan. In the hills outside Mecca, a cave called Hira sat on the slope of a mountain the locals called Jabal al-Nur, the Mountain of Light. For years, a merchant named Muhammad had been withdrawing to this cave. He was around 40 years old, respected in his community for his honesty, but increasingly uneasy with the world around him. A society built on idol worship, tribal violence, and deep inequality. He went to Hira to think, to reflect, to search for something he couldn't yet name. On this particular night, everything changed. Tradition holds that he was overcome by a powerful presence in the cave, the angel Jibril, appearing to deliver a message. According to the accounts passed down, Jibril commanded him to recite. Muhammad, who had never been taught to read, replied that he could not. The command came again, more forcefully, until finally the first words arrived. An instruction to recite in the name of the Creator, who made humankind and taught by the pen what people did not know. Shaken and overwhelmed, Muhammad rushed home to his wife, Khadijah, asking to be wrapped and covered while he processed what had happened. Khadijah reassured him, reminding him of his own good character, and took him to her cousin Waraka, an elderly scholar familiar with earlier scriptures. Waraka recognized the description immediately. This was the same angel who had come to Moses and Jesus. He also warned Muhammad that his own people would eventually turn against him, oppose him, and try to drive him out. A pattern, he said, that every messenger before him had faced. That single night in the cave was the beginning of something that would unfold gradually over the next 23 years. Unlike a book written in one sitting, this scripture came down piece by piece, sometimes a few verses, sometimes entire chapters, spread across more than 2 decades. This wasn't random. Each portion tended to respond directly to real events, a question the community faced, a crisis, a change in circumstance. This gradual approach mattered. Major religious obligations, daily prayer, fasting, charity, pilgrimage, weren't all introduced at once. They arrived in stages, giving a brand new community time to absorb one change before the next was introduced. It also meant the message itself grew alongside the struggles of the earliest believers, offering reassurance during their hardest years and reminding them repeatedly that relief and support would come. The first 3 years of Muhammad's mission were quiet and private. He shared the message only with those closest to him. His wife Khadijah, his young cousin Ali, his loyal friend Abu Bakr, and his freed servant Zaid. These earliest converts became the foundation of a small, secret community that met away from public view. As more verses arrived, more people quietly joined. Eventually the message could no longer stay hidden, and Muhammad was instructed to make his call public. Standing on a hill in Mecca and addressing his tribe directly. What followed was rejection, ridicule, and eventually outright persecution, especially from Mecca's merchant elite who saw the new teachings about equality, fair treatment of the poor, and the end of idol worship as a direct threat to their wealth and status built around the old religious system. Despite growing hostility, the community held together and kept expanding. A small, often persecuted group gradually reshaping the values of an entire society from the ground up. From the very beginning, this revelation wasn't left to memory alone. Muhammad appointed scribes to write down each new portion as it came, using whatever materials were available at the time. Flattened stones, pieces of leather, bone, and palm leaf stalks. He would dictate not just the words, but exactly where each verse belonged within its chapter, and companions would cross-check their written copies against each other, and against Muhammad himself, to catch any error. Alongside this written record, memorization was treated as equally essential. Muhammad actively encouraged his companions to commit the text to heart, and many of his closest followers, including the men who would later lead the Muslim community after his death, memorized the entire text. Each year during Ramadan, Muhammad would recite the whole revelation to Jibril as a form of verification. In the final year of his life, he reportedly did this twice. After Muhammad's death, a crisis pushed the community to formally compile everything into a single book. In a battle at Yamama, a significant number of those who had memorized the entire text were killed. The second caliph, Umar, grew concerned that without a single authoritative written copy, portions of the revelation could eventually be lost. He convinced the first caliph, Abu Bakr, to commission an official compilation. The job went to Zayd ibn Thabit, one of the Prophet's most trusted scribes. Zayd cross-referenced every written fragment held by different companions against the memorized versions circulating throughout the community, verifying each verse against multiple independent sources before it was accepted. The finished manuscript was kept first by Abu Bakr, then passed to Umar, and finally entrusted to Umar's daughter Hafsa, herself one of the people who had memorized the complete text. As Islam spread rapidly beyond Arabia, new Muslim communities in different regions began reciting the text with slight regional variations in pronunciation and dialect. The third caliph, Uthman, recognized this as a serious risk to the unity of the growing Muslim world, and ordered a definitive, standardized edition to be produced, based directly on Hafsa's manuscript, and cross-checked once again by a team led by Zayd ibn Thabit, working specifically in the original Quraysh dialect in which the revelation had first come down. Once this standard version was finalized, Uthman had copies distributed to the major centers of the Muslim world: Mecca, Medina, Basra, Kufa, and Damascus, and ordered earlier, unofficial fragments retired to prevent future confusion. That Uthmanic text became the single reference point for every copy made afterward, and it remains the basis of the text used worldwide today. The result, from Jakarta to Istanbul, from Lagos to London, every printed copy in circulation today traces back to that same standardized 8th century text, reinforced continuously, generation after generation, by an unbroken oral chain of memorizers reciting it exactly as they received it. Even now, millions of people around the world hold the entire text in memory, a scale of memorization no other book in history has come close to matching. Scholars and believers point to several features of the text that they argue go beyond what a 7th century audience could have produced or verified on its own. Its literary style is often described as sitting in a category of its own, neither conventional poetry nor ordinary prose. Composed by a man widely known to be unable to read or write, in a culture that prized oratory and poetry above almost everything else. Accounts describe even hostile skeptics and master poets of the era being visibly shaken upon hearing it recited. Its internal structure has also drawn attention from later scholars, who identified striking patterns in how certain key words are distributed and positioned across facing pages of the standard printed layout, patterns some argue would be extraordinarily difficult to engineer intentionally, especially given that the material was revealed in fragments over 23 years, in no fixed writing order. Its content has also been read by many later commentators, as anticipating ideas confirmed only by modern science centuries afterward. References interpreted as touching on the origins of the universe, the expansion of the cosmos, the layered protective role of Earth's atmosphere, stages of embryonic development, and the underwater boundary layers where different bodies of seawater meet without immediately mixing. Believers see these as signs of a source beyond ordinary 7th century human knowledge. Critics and scholars outside the tradition often read the same verses more broadly or metaphorically. Either way, these interpretations have become a significant part of how the text's meaning is discussed today. What's clear regardless of one's belief is the scale of what happened next. Within roughly 2 decades, a fragmented, tribal, often violent society was reshaped around a shared ethical and legal framework, one that addressed the treatment of women, orphans, slaves, and even animals, ideas that were strikingly progressive for 7th century Arabia. For well over 1 billion people today, this text remains something recited daily, memorized from childhood, and treated as a living connection to the divine. Not simply a historical artifact, but a text still shaping daily prayer, personal reflection, and moral life across the globe. more than 14 centuries after that first night in the cave of Hira.